Good morning, and welcome to the Think and Grow Rich show, brought to you by the McNeil Factor and the International Mastermind Association. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist, and I am just so excited to be with you guys every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. as we discuss and dive into the classic work by Napoleon Hill as compiled in his book, Think and Grow Rich. This is a very special conversation because once a month, we have a masterclass conversation. And I want to bring in my co-host and she's kind of like my mentor in this entire process, Miss Ann McNeil. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the conversation, Ann.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm very excited to be here, Galen. And today I'm here from Houston. And this is going to be every Saturday is a phenomenal show. But today it's just the two of us. And so we're going to have an exciting conversation. But what we also want to do is make sure that all of our guests chime in with their questions and their comments, and we're going to be engaging them in a different kind of way, because what we have planned for the show today will drill down in your stuff, whatever that stuff is. And we're going to be asking you some serious questions, and would like for you to take a moment, take a pen and paper, and jot down some of your reflective responses to these questions. So, Galen, I'm excited to be here, and welcome back, actually. Excited to see you again.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for that. Welcome back. And I came in just as Dr. Peter James has to take some time off. He's working on some things, and so we want to let him know that we're thinking about him, and we are going to do our best to kind of play as if he were here, because we always appreciate the energy and expertise that he brings to the conversation. I feel really good, though, because we've got some heavy hitters already chiming in on our various social media platforms. I see Doretha Dennis there. Tashana is already on. Wyman Winbush. Johnny Lloyd. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, we're going to need some heavy hitters, because we're going to be diving in deep this morning. And I think we're going to be asking a whole lot more questions than providing answers. So we're going to be kind of waiting on and depending on our audience to help us answer some of these questions that Napoleon Hill created. So come on, get on board. I'm going to pause just for a little bit so that you can share this broadcast and bring in anyone that you believe needs to be a part of this conversation, because this is really about you, right? This is about the community. Miss Ann and I, we talk once, maybe even twice a week with each other as we kick around these concepts. But once a week, we come to you because we want to grow from your insights. So this is a community. Don't think of this as a broadcast. Think of this as a community. And so with that, before we jump in, because it's so easy for us to get down this path,
Yes.
I want us to kind of reflect on all the principles that Napoleon Hill has accumulated in this great book, because today we're going to be talking about organized planning, which is the crystallization of desire. Really, really important. I mean, we could spend all month just talking about this one concept, but this sits inside of an entire philosophy, an entire formula. And so let's go ahead and take a look at all of those principles and pay close attention as to where organized planning sits and how it fits in this process.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically. But we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the MasterMind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the Wild Wild West days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right. And so, one of the things I really love about that overview is it talks about how organized planning is really, really important, because having the thought and not doing anything with that thought really doesn't do any good. I mean, I know so many people, and I have been victim of this myself, where we just talk about this is something we're going to do someday. You know what I should do? You know what really would be a great idea, and we don't really do anything with it. And one of the phrases that I use with my clients all the time, my coaching clients all the time, is either do it or stop talking about it. Right? Either do it or stop talking about it, and that's what organized planning is about. And so, Anna, I want to bring in the conversation that you and I had right before we went live, and that is my belief that you don't struggle with any of the challenges that organized planning talks about, because later in the chapter it talks about the 30 major causes of failure, and it's my belief that, Ann, you don't struggle with any of those. You've got all of that licked. It's all behind you. You're on the other side of those failures. Am I correct in that assumption?
It's a good thing my boyfriend, husband, same person, is not
Thanks for
answering that
clarifying that.
question. Or my children, they're not answering that question. Are those people who know me very, 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 very well. And Galen, I shared with you before the show started that 90% of those questions, and we're going to get to the questions we're going to ask all of our guests, but I want to go back to something you said about, excuse me, why is it that our plans and our causes of failure exist? I'd like to go back to chapter 1, first principle about desire. And in the beginning of the organized planning chapter, Napoleon Hill even tells us that everything starts with and we're talking to all of you and us. So we're talking to all of us. Everything starts with our desire. So when we start talking this morning about these causes of failure, I'm going to challenge all of us to think back to your desire. What is it that you want? That you want so badly, like Barnes, you're willing to put in the 2 to 5 years with nothing. You can't see a thing, but you're willing to give it all you got because you have not just a desire, you have a burning desire for that thing, person, whatever it is, whoever it is. But then I want to challenge you to think about, what imagination do you employ to begin to develop these plans? See, that's what this chapter is really about. But Napoleon Hill says that you must also have a group of individuals. We are your mastermind group. You are a part of our mastermind group every Saturday. And that's where we're going to challenge each of you to keep coming back and challenge yourself to do the work. And if not you, who's going to do it for you? And if not now, when are you going to make a decision to even have a desire? But also, he says that you must have an accountability group of individuals. He called it a mastermind group or mastermind alliance or mastermind principle that you're going to employ and use to vet your plans. So now I'll go back to the question that was asked of me by Galen about these 30 causes of failure. Out of the 30, I say I can definitely relate to 24. Okay, 23, 24. So we can go ahead and get started, and we're going to challenge all of you to go, Galen, I think it was page 120. If you have your book, yes, this is the Masterclass, and you're all a part of the class. So we're going to ask you, thank you so much. We see your comments, Johnny and Doretha, thank you for your comments. But we're going to ask each of you to turn to, what page is it, Galen?
It's page, it starts on page 126.
Let's say 126. So we're going to ask you to walk with Galen and I. Comment, like, share the show, call some friends and ask them, what about this question? Can you answer this question for me about me? Because see, I could sit here and say things about myself. Galen can say things about himself. But the people that know you best, they may have a different opinion. And this is why the mastermind principle, the mastermind alliance, the master class, this is why it's so important to have check and balances about what you think. And I say all the time, I can see that bolt in your eye, but I can see that speck in your eye, but I can't see that bolt in my eye. So Galen, we're ready to, I like to say, get this party started.
Yeah. Let's jump in. One of the things, and this is very similar to what you said, but one of the things that we talk about a lot, especially with my clients, is intent versus impact. And most people know their intention. Most people know what they are intending to do, how they are intending to show up. But usually, to your point, we need someone else to help us become aware of our impact. How are we actually showing up? And one of the things I really liked about what we were talking about beforehand was this idea that very often we will use some of these causes as excuses, right? And so this first one, you were talking about how uh, you know unfavorable hereditary background. We will use that as an excuse. It might be a real thing, but we will stake our whole reason for not acting because of something that I inherited. Oh my gosh, I wasn't born in the right family. I wasn't born with a lot of money. I didn't. For some of us, I didn't have two parents in the household. How have you seen people activate that failure, whether it was real or whether it was something that they just leaned on more than maybe they should have?
Well, I start with myself. Uh, my mom was a maid. My father did days work, and he had a little something, something on the side where he uh, had a job doing lawn service. My mom was a maid. And my father uh, would always say, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda, and I didn't. I grew up with that. I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda, and I didn't. And being parents, having parents that were sharecroppers, and of course, that goes back to slavery in terms of where we come from, those of us that are here, look like me. And a lot of that unfavorable heredity from our background was passed down. But for me, it wasn't until I began to read this book, it wasn't until I began to understand the Word of God, and it wasn't until I went to Africa for the very first time that I began to see my hereditary background didn't start here.
Mm.
Come on, somebody. It didn't start here. So why then would I not assume royalty? Why wouldn't I do that in my thinking and in my being and in my doing? And so 1979, when I picked this book up and he talked about a dream, I never had a dream. So if I had never had a dream, how could I have a dream come true when you talk about hereditary background, which is the first question? So going back now and being able to share with my clients and my employees who I work for, 5 businesses, I now see that everything starts with how do I see myself?
Mm.
How do you see yourself? And if you don't have the clarity that you need, and you don't have the self-confidence that is required to hit that goal, then when do you start? And for those of you who say, look, I don't have that problem, I got it all worked out, I would like to suggest that no matter who you are and where you are, you can always level up to the next level. So, Galen, we can keep going down the questions, but what I want to ask those who are listening in, put in the chat, what is it that's in your background that you think that may be holding you back? Now, if you say, listen, I'm not going to tell the world about me, then write it down on a sheet of paper. Our desire here as a part of this masterclass is to help you look at some things that maybe you never really looked at like that. And I'll go back to desire, hereditary background, and those people that preceded me and my family. My mom, in addition to being a maid, she was a holiness minister, for those of us who know what that means. So regardless of what the world was saying about me, she was giving us the word literally every single day. But I just did not know, Galen, how to live that word. I had, I could recite it. Like we talked about one of the scriptures before we came on today. Sure, I could recite it, but it wasn't until I read this book and began to live this book and like you said earlier, act on what I was reading with my accountability partners, of course, then I began to do away with that stuff that was in my background that people were saying.
Yeah, I love this. I love what you're saying, and it reminds me of there's a song lyric that says, If you don't see God when you look in the mirror, why not?"
Hmm.
Right? And that just really caused, when I heard that, I had to stop the music. I had to write that down, and I had to really, really ask myself if I see God when I look in the mirror.
Well, Galen, we have a comment here from one of our guests that says we all have to shake that chip off our shoulders. There are a lot of children of poor alcoholics who have accomplished a lot. Why not me? And not just why not me, why not now? But then the other question comes, how? And thank you, Regina, who's saying battling with depression, emotional stuff holds me back. And I will share with you, Regina, yes, there's, we talk about medication, but I will share with you a lot of depression comes from selflessness. And so one of our chapters discuss autosuggestion and what is the self-talk. So I would encourage you, the statement you just made, consider saying exactly what Galen said. Every time you look in the mirror, say, I know that I am looking back at a child of God.
Mm.
And then come up and create a affirmation statement, or you may find a scripture. I can do all things, whatever works for you. But begin to look at reprogramming how you say and speak the words. And this is, again, coming back from hereditary. Thank you, Tashana. My self-confidence, but it's increasing now that I do my self-confidence formula. And Tashana is a part of our clarity mastermind. And what she's referring to is the fact that we have exercises that we do every day, and it increases our self-confidence, selflessness. Thank you, Doretha. So, Galen, we can go on to the next question. And
Yeah,
thank you
yeah.
everybody for chiming in, because this is cathartic.
Yeah, so there are so many here. So I'm going to kind of skip around, but I
It's
want to
fine.
challenge everyone, especially those that are chatting, because we really appreciate the chat. Chat the number of the cause that, as my pastor used to say, if you can't say amen, at least say ouch. But you need to say something. All right. Are there any particular elements, causes that you tend to be susceptible to? And I'll tell you, these next couple, these are big ones. Lack of a well-defined purpose in life, and lack of ambition to aim above mediocrity. Those are big ones. And I'll tell you, for me, that number two, that was a big one for a while, because, and you and I have had this conversation, because I did so many things, so many different things. It was hard for me to say this is who I am, because I felt like I was, by claiming that, I was saying, well, I don't do those other things.
Exactly.
And that wasn't the case at all. And it wasn't until I started to hone in on this is who I am, that all these other principles started to work in my life. So that's a big one that I, even Napoleon Hill says 98% of people haven't analyzed their life. They haven't analyzed their desire, their aim, in order to understand this is who I am. What about you? How easy was that for you to overcome, and to hone in on?
Well, Galen, what I'd like to do, I'm going to come back to the question, but it just dawned on me, we have a lot of people listening that don't have the book. And this is a podcast. So we want to just make sure that you understand we're talking about the 30 major causes of failure. And you can go to Google without the book
Mm.
and just put in the words Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, 30 major causes of failure. You can follow along with us. But just in case you don't, the first question we discuss unfavorable hereditary background. Number two, lack of a well-defined purpose in life. Number three, lack of ambition to aim above mediocrity. Number 4, insufficient education. Number 5, lack of self-discipline. Number 6, ill health. Number 7, unfavorable environmental influences during childhood. Number 8, procrastination. Number 9, lack of persistence. Number 10, negative personality. Number 11, lack of controlled sexual urge. Number 12, uncontrolled desire for something for nothing. Number 13, lack of a well-defined power of decision. 14, one or more of the 6 basic fears. 15, wrong selection of a mate in marriage. 16, overcaution. 17, wrong selection of associates in business. 18, superstition and prejudice. 19, wrong selection of a vocation. 20, lack of concentration of effort. 21, the habit of indiscriminate spending. 22, lack of enthusiasm. 23, intolerance. 24, intemperance. 25, inability to cooperate with others. 26, possession of power that was not acquired through self-effort. 27, intentional dishonesty. 28, egotism and vanity. 29, guessing instead of thinking. 30, lack of capital. Those are the 30 major causes of failure. Now, you can, like Galen said, jot down the number or numbers that relate to you. And we'll go back to the question Galen was asking me and asking all of us. And Galen, that question was,
Yeah, which one or two or three are you most susceptible to? And here's where this is coming from for me. Um, I love quotes. One of my books is a book of quotes, and you got everyone from Aristotle to Socrates to Steve Jobs to just all these incredible thinkers. But one of my favorite quotes comes from Mike Tyson, where he says it's hard to get knocked out by a punch that you can see coming. And so what are those punches that, okay, I still got to watch out for it, but this is typically what I fall victim to. And I can tell on myself, there are two that I am forever watching for. And for me, those are number 20, the lack of concentration of effort. Because as I said before, I've done a lot of things. I'm relatively good at a lot of things. But just because I'm relatively good doesn't mean that I should be doing them. Right. And it doesn't mean that that's what my focus should be. And then the other one for me is number 29, guessing instead of thinking, really putting in the work to do the analysis to get the facts as opposed to going off of intuition. So for me, I usually have to pause to make sure that those two aren't being activated. And Ms. Ann, I am sure you've gone past all of these. You've overcome all of these. Do you have any two or three that tend to glare, that tend to come up most frequently for you?
oh, well, I would say start with number 2. Number 2, lack of a well-defined purpose in life. And Napoleon Hill says that there's no hope of success for the person who does not have a central purpose, a definite goal at which to aim. And I have to keep going back to those who know me well can recite this with me. And I keep saying the same thing because I really want to drill it in my mind. And I want to remind us to always have a December 31st, 1979 experience. Because when I picked this book up and realized I did not have a definite goal or aim, I was doing exactly what I was taught to do. Go to school, get a good education, and get a good corporate job. I did that. So it forced me, Galen, to go back to thinking about how we're taught. So when I say lack of a well-defined purpose in life, 5 businesses. Right now, I'm in Houston for a national strategic planning session that I'm hosting immediately after this program is over for the National Association of Black Women in Construction. Lack of a well-defined purpose in life. I'm asking each one of you what idea that God has given to you that you're running from. That lack of a well-defined purpose in your life, that calling, that book, that business, that not-for-profit, that support, help, that he's only calling you. Only you can give it life. But will that dream die with you forever? See, that was me when I read this book. And like I share with people from the International Mastermind Association that was created from this number 2, you see, if I did not do the work and continue to do the work, the International Mastermind Association would never have been formed. The first mastermind group would never have been formed that led to hundreds and thousands of people being impacted by this work. A lack of a well-defined purpose in life, your life, my life. So Galen, I can go on and on. The construction company that I started in 1980, 81, 82, from a lack of a well-defined purpose in life, just from something as simply as working on our house, my husband and myself, and then purchasing the house across the street, then purchasing the house down the street, and then purchasing the house on the next street, and realizing we knew nothing about construction. But to go from that, Galen, to now having done over hundreds of millions of dollars in construction, have hired literally, yes, impacted thousands in this industry. So I'm here with the National Association for Black Women in Construction talking about how now do we create a well-defined plan now internationally for this organization. What does construction for Black women look like 100 years from now, 50, 20, 10 next year? So Galen, I can go through all of these. One of the ones we talked about earlier was insufficient education. You see, when I picked up this book, Think and Grow Rich, I was working on a master's degree. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting, working on a master's degree. And in the process of getting a PhD. Why? Because that's what I was told I needed to do. So I was on that trajectory. Now, insufficient education. Napoleon Hill says that this is a handicap which may be overcome with comparative ease, because you see, experience has taught all of us that the best educated people are self-made. Look at the people that he talked about in the book. They're self-made. And so when I began to question myself about why am I getting a PhD? Why am I even getting a master's degree? I did finish it. And then I began to realize in the specialized knowledge chapter, Galen, that if I niche to be rich in construction, I don't need all of those other degrees. What I need to do is become an expert in my craft, in my space. And that's what I teach my clients, my consulting clients, my construction clients, my coaching clients, the people who are in all of these businesses with us. That's what I teach, because again, if we don't know better, we can't do better. I can go through all of these: lack of self-discipline, running after ill health things. We don't get into that, Galen. Procrastination, I was huge in that. Huge. Procrastination, I had to be to work at 8 o'clock when I had a job, and I would get up at 7:30. Just procrastinating because I knew there's some things I needed to do and I was running from them. Lack of persistence, Galen. I don't think you really want me to keep going. We want to talk to those people in the audience and asking them. You see, because these questions, and let me say this too, Galen. Previously, Chris and I talked about self-inventory. The International Mastermind Association, we're going to talk about this a little later on. Or really, it's up to you, Galen, we could do it now. But self-inventory, these questions, when you begin to honestly answer these questions, Galen, we're talking to all of us because we're all on this journey together and it's not a destination. But when you really, I like to use the word, get butt naked with yourself. Come on, somebody. Get butt naked with yourself and ask yourself to be honest for the first time. See, that's what happened to me on December 31st. I had all the excuses why I was broke and broken. And then I had to look in that mirror and I say, you know what? It's you, Ann McNeil, standing, kneeling in the need of prayer. Yes, I struggle with procrastination. Yes, Ruby, thank you.
Mhm.
But this is what I want to say about all of these. And Gail and I talked about this before the program is over. When you have a clear goal that you can see, you can touch, you can feel it, you can smell it, you then begin to overcome many of these failures. Because you see, what is failure? And I wrote this before we started, say, failure is nothing but food for your future success. But when you eat and ingest food, it does good for the body if it's good food. So you go back. How do you make failure good food for your body? You go back and reflect. That's why I wrote a book entitled My Daily Date with Myself, to begin to create a process of journaling my ideas, my thoughts, my opportunities, what I'm thankful for, what I'm grateful for. Why? Because when you go back on these failures, you get pen to paper and you say each one of these, why did this happen? What can I do differently? Because see, if you don't do that introspection and that reflection, guess what's going to happen? I'll tell you what happened to me. I kept making the same mistakes over and over and over. We won't get into too many of those, Gayla, but
Yeah.
let's go ahead and ask our audience some of those questions.
No, I mean, so we've got some great comments already in the chat. Boss Lady is like, yeah, number 20. She's with me on number 20, number 29. Number 2, to your point, she's like that really, really important. We heard from Ruby. Laverne, she says that she's got several. She's like listing all these numbers: 7, 17, 18, 23. I think one of the things that she says, though, that Laverne says, that fortunately she's taking accountability. And I think
Yes.
that's the key. That's the key. And something that you mentioned just in passing is the importance of writing this stuff down, because one of the things I've come to really appreciate is that in our heads, everything makes sense, right? In our heads,
Yes.
if you read silently to yourself, you think you understand, but until you have to explain it, until you have to say it out loud or write down your thoughts and reflect on what you write down, then you really appreciate how much you might not truly understand what's going on. So journaling has more power and more import than a lot of us give it credit, especially those of us who don't really do it. So I would encourage you to actually write down the answers to these questions, to the other questions that Napoleon Hill poses, even if you're the only one that will look at the answer. But one of the things I really like about this is that at the beginning of this chapter, Napoleon talks about the importance of having accountability partners, having people who understand your vision, having a mastermind group. One of the places that we go to in order to connect with like-minded people is this annual meeting. So, Miss Ann, talk a little bit about this annual meeting that you guys have created, that you've been a part of for several years now. Why is that important, and how can people get involved if they haven't attended yet?
Well, thank you, Galen. And I'd like to challenge everybody that many of these questions that we're discussing, for me, and this is what my journey is, as I talked about 1979 and picking up the book. Well, I gave the book to friends. Don't do this. Don't do this. I didn't know any better, so I didn't do any better till I knew better. But I would for birthday, everybody has something. Christmas, I started giving this book to my friends, and many of them started reading the book, and eventually 10 of us formed for me, my first mastermind group. And we would meet every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern time. Yes, 10 straight years. And if they're listening, they know who they are. We met 10 straight years at 7 a.m. And surely everybody didn't come at first. But what we would do every year, we would walk through this book. And when we got to the section that talked about self-inventory, Napoleon Hill, for those of you that have the book, go further into the chapter. And he said that there are 28 questions you should answer, self-inventory. But we had already categorized another book we read that was phenomenal. It's called Success, the Glenn Bland Method. Glenn Bland read Napoleon Hill's book while on a delayed flight, picked the book up in the airport. But he then wrote his version of Think and Grow Rich by turning it into the book of Proverbs. But what he did for us, and this comes to the question that is being asked of me about this annual meeting for your life, what this next book did, again, Success, the Glenn Bland Method by Glenn Bland, he said, when you take Napoleon Hill's book, he came up with 4 categories of his life that he set goals in. So we adopted that. And it was spiritual, financial, health, and family. But over the years, doing these questions, I began to realize that there were other areas because I wanted to have a business and these different things I wanted to add. But what we began to realize, we would meet every week, then once a month, we would reassess ourselves. And then once a quarter, we would reassess ourselves. And eventually, we started meeting once a year. And Galen, I like to share with people that just imagine if you had to go before a tribunal, and this is my favorite analogy for this event. So each of you listening, imagine that January 1st, you had to go before a tribunal every year, and you had to give an account for the 10 areas of your life. And what did you do with the 365 days toward the goals that you set? Your spiritual goal, your family goal, your financial goal, your health goal, your education goal. What about that personal growth and development goal? What about your business or your job goal? How about the recreation, creativity, and civic area of your life? But what we ended up doing, we started setting goals for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. 5 years was a long way out. But eventually that 5 years turned into 10, that turned into 20. For right now, I'm in my 40th year. So imagine going before the tribunal. You've got to give an account for your last 365 days. Now, if you did not do what you said you were going to do that last 365, why should you be given the next 365 days? That's the gist of why the International Mastermind Association event was created. So each of you, we have an opportunity for you to join us in January 2022 on the 7th and the 8th in Boca Raton at the Embassy Suites in Boca, January 7th and 8th at Boca Raton Embassy Suites. You can go to internationalmasterminders.com and you can register. You can go to Eventbrite, register. You can go to my website and register. But internationalmasterminders.com, register and join us. But continue to walk through this process and give an account for your life. But all of those areas, you see, for a while when I started my business, I thought my name was the name of my business. The name of my first business was MCO Construction. I didn't realize that there were so many other areas of my life that I needed to be accountable for. And that's what a mastermind group will do for you. But start with one thing, and that's your desire. But bring your family. We do also have a mastermind group for the youth. And our kids come and they give an account for their goals. They bring their life in right. Yes, they do. First graders, second graders, They bring their life in writing, and Galen's smiling because he's remembering his first experience. His first experience. So, Galen, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing more convicting than having an 8-year-old come with more structure to their life goals than you do. And you talked
But
earlier.
your first time now. They didn't get you the second time, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you talked earlier about, how much pride we put in the degrees that we acquire. And I came the first time, pretty proud of what I had accomplished and who I was. And when I sat at that table and I had 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds questioning elements of my plan, that was really humbling that first time. And and again, just to tie back to what we said earlier, if you just think about your life, it's easy to be seduced into thinking my life is fine. I'm doing great things. I'm good. I'm good. But when you have to put your life in writing, when you have to address those elements of your life that really result in a full life, that that brings a bit of conviction. And that's the real magic of this process. Yeah, it's great to be around like-minded people. It's great to be around people that will give you encouragement and give you suggestions and recommendations on how to execute your goals. But the real work comes before you get there, because you have to put your life in writing, even to the point where Ms. Ann won't let you in the door if you don't have if you didn't do the pre-work, and you can't bring and hand over a written account of your life. You can't come in the room. You got to sit outside and handwrite what you didn't do beforehand, because that's the real work. That's the real work. If you don't put your life in writing, it's easy to be seduced into thinking things are just great, things are just fine, and that's the magic. You mentioned Success, the Glenn Bland Method, and I'm actually going through that book right now. Amazing book. Another book I'm going to recommend that builds off of Think and Grow Rich. He specifically mentions Napoleon Hill, and even if he hadn't, I was getting the sense that there were some common themes, and that is The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv
And yes,
Eker.
yes,
Oh
yes.
my gosh, just really, really, he really drives home the first word of Napoleon Hill, the title of Napoleon Hill's book. He really drives home, what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? Because that really controls and influences all of the other things that you say that you're focused on doing. And if you don't know what you're thinking about, if you can't influence what you're thinking about, how in the world are you going to influence the world into giving you those things that you say that you want? So just another great book to check out.
Yeah, Gayla, while we're talking about books, and let's go back to the beginning. Mm. For those of you, Johnny Lloyd, and the rest of you that are certified by the Napoleon Hill Foundation, Havilah Malone, we're certified by the Napoleon Hill Foundation uh, to teach this philosophy. And when you really start drilling down into not just Napoleon Hill, but we're going to start doing a little Q&A while you wait to start the show with us. And Andrew Carnegie, remember, asked Napoleon Hill the question if he would be willing to give 20 years of his life to research this philosophy of success, but he would not pay him a dime. So Carnegie's influence on Napoleon Hill's writing was steeped in the Word of God. Because you see, Carnegie was a staunch Christian. So what does the Word say about desire? Bible readers, Wimbush, he says he would give you the desire of your what? Your heart. But what does your heart desire, all of you listening to us? What's the first principle? Desire. So if the first principle of this book is desire, we're talking about books. We're going to start back with the book. Because even when Glenn Bland wrote his book, he has scriptures all through the book and the book of Proverbs intertwined with these principles. You see, the point I'm making is that these principles, heart, thank you. Yes, your heart's desire. These principles, 13 principles we're discussing, come from the principles of the Word of God. That's the first book. But like I said earlier, when we talked about hereditary background, my mom was a holiness minister. I knew that word that she put in me from that book. But this book is helping me learn how to live that word. Okay, so I want to challenge all of you, Galen and I want to challenge you. Challenge yourself and continue to ask, what is it that you desire? You see, these 30 causes of failure that we're discussing and the self-analysis questions, if you don't have a desire that's clear, don't worry about how you're going to achieve it. Don't worry about, the plan and all of that. This organized planning chapter, if you keep coming back to it with your MasterMind group, the plans will emerge through your imagination and through your action and your persistence and your perseverance and all these other principles. But if you don't start with, for me, my first desire was to save $1,000. Took me 10 years, yes, to get out of the debt, to be able to understand how now passively to make $1,000 a day. That's now the goal. But what is your goal for you? That's really, as we talk about failures, Galen and I discussed, we don't want to leave you with the problem without a solution to the problem. Right, Galen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as we're thinking about this and coming to the close of this conversation, I want to go back to you and ask, what are some key things that you took from this conversation? And then what are some things that you're working on that people can get involved with if they want more? Because it's always amazing to me how I can be part of the show and still learn so much from just the conversation and having my ideas tested. So what were some things that you picked up from this conversation? And then how can people get more of you if they want to get involved?
Well, Galen, one of the things we've heard, and I don't know who said it first, but when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think my teacher, as a part of these principles, has been Napoleon Hill. I enjoy listening to Jim Rohn actually every day. And one of the things that I'm getting from this particular podcast is a well-defined desire, but in every area of my business and in every area of my life. For those of you that are listening to us that own a business, when you have well-defined goals and a desire, stop and ask yourself, what's next? If you don't wake up tomorrow and everything you've built has been based upon your lack of decisions to put some things in place to take care of your family, that that will, but also that trust, investing and making sure all your papers in order. You know what I'm talking about. Lack of, not just goals, but well-defined goals, but in every area of your life. And I think it's Zig Ziglar says that, you're going to be dead a lot longer than you're living. What's your goal for where you're going to spend eternity? Wow. So for me, Galen, drilling down in that question number 2, before I can get to the rest of them, and asking God, what is he calling me to do for the people who will hear my voice? You see, there are certain people, Galen, that will only hear your voice. There's certain people that will only hear my voice. There's certain people that will only hear Wimbush's voice, Laverne's voice, Tashana's voice, Aida's voice. And Aida, I have to say this publicly. I'm not sure if you're still listening, but she has such a phenomenal concept. And I'm really encouraging her to consider doing a franchise. She'll tell you what that is. Desires of your heart. Thank you. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Proverb 4:23. You can connect with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Wimbush, for that. But you can connect with me a number of different places. But I want to just mention that we talked about journaling. Really get the daily date with yourself spirit. Take some time for yourself. I wrote a book, Is a Journal. It is helping me phenomenally for the last 20, 30 years. And many people ask me about this process, and I decided to publish it. It is called the McNeil Factor, a daily date with yourself. And very simply, it gives you exercises of what you can do. Your daily date with yourself. You can connect with me through my website at AnnMcNeil.com. AnnMcNeil.com. You can connect with me. I am hosting we've been talking about self-inventory. We're talking about these failures, causes of failure. I'm hosting a mid-year check-in for your life. A mid-year check-in for your life. And you can go to my website at AnnMcNeil.com and get the details. But it is scheduled for Saturday, the 31st of July from 1 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern. And many of the things we've discussed today, we will send you homework you must do before you show up. Because see, it's not just another, let me just attend. No, 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 no. This is about your life and every area of your life. Yes, spiritually, what are you doing on a daily basis? Is it listening to a podcast? Is it praise? Is it worship? Is it prayer? Is it a scripture? What? Financially, are you vested in your Roth IRA, your 401k? Do you have short-term savings, long-term savings? This pandemic taught all of us that if you did not come into the pandemic with a year saved, wait a minute now, not just for you, but those people who are depending upon you. What if someone passes that's not in your immediate family and your family members are looking to you to cover the burial? This is real. Oh, you did not know that you were financially responsible? These are kind of things that we discuss. What about taking that idea and turning it into a business? But how do you do that? What do you do next? Are you creative? What are you doing with that? Are you involved in the civic areas of your life? What about recreation? Do you take a vacation? Do you take time? Or do you plan more time for that vacation than the time you plan for your life? So, Galen, these are some of the ways people can connect with me, but I would strongly suggest connect with us on July 31st as a part of our McNeil Factor mid-year check-in for your life. You can go to AnnMcNeil.com. And if you're interested in having something right now to connect, you can text the word Ann, that's ANN, at 55678. You can jot it down and share it with your friends. The number is 55678. And Galen, that's how people can connect with me.
Well, fantastic. Well, before I share how people can connect with me, one of the things I really like about this book is something that you mentioned, how it seems to operationalize the Bible. It seems to operationalize a lot of philosophy that we've heard from other places. It tells you in pretty plain talk how to make this real. Now, plain talk for 1937, but
Yes.
still plain talk. One of the questions that came in, I definitely want to address before we leave. Aaliyah asked, "How do I figure out what my true desire is?" And I think one of the things that came to mind is an author, a book by the name of Positive Intelligence, written by Shazad Shermine. He professes, and a lot of other people have talked about this, but he professes that we always know what it is that we're supposed to do. The key is, how do you remember what that is? But we came here with really clear understanding of what it is that we're supposed to do. If you ask any 3, 4, or 5-year-old, what do you want to do with your life? They can tell you pretty clearly, well, I want to be, I want to be president, or I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a movie star, right? We always know, but it's the reasonable, responsible adults that come into our lives that tell us, well, pick something more reasonable. And we do that over time. And after a while, we forget this thing that we desire to do. And I tell my clients very often, because there's an actual process that we go through with them. And I tell them that once we find that real desire, the way that you know that it's your real desire is it should make you pee in your pants a little bit, right? It should make you really, I'm supposed to do that? Me? You should have a Moses moment. Clearly, you're talking to somebody else when you say that this is what you're wanting me to do. No, I'm talking to you. And that's how you know. It's about remembering. It's about having the boldness to state, this is what I am here to do. And this book is a great place to start. Finding a mastermind group is another place to go. And there are just so many other places and people that will help you remember what you were sent here to do, and then give you the courage to step into that. For me, I just really, really love that every time we get into these conversations, we're able to bring to my mind something that I thought I understood before. Right. I was convinced that I understood before until we have these conversations and I understand at a deeper level, just really reflecting on the importance of writing down and journaling. I thought I understood that before, but this conversation helps me appreciate how important that is, because in our minds we think we think we're good, we think we're all right, but when you have to write it down and commit it to writing, that's where the rubber hits the road. The best way to get a hold of me, there are so many ways. LinkedIn. You can go to my website. Just so many different ways. KillGlobalCoaching.com is my website. You can email me at Galen@KillGlobalCoaching.com. But the most fun way, I think, and the most insightful way to get a hold of me is by going to my new podcast called Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. It's available on every podcast platform. We're actually, believe it or not, getting ready to close down season 1. We've had incredible conversations with other leaders. I think Wyman Winbush had an amazing episode. So definitely come to, anywhere you consume podcasts, look for Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership, and just peruse all of the different leaders that we've talked to. Much like the book Think and Grow Rich, we hit you with the straight talk. We try to tell you what it really takes to be successful. And it's not as complicated as it sounds at times. And it really requires a lot more fundamentals than I think a lot of people really appreciate. So I challenge you to check me out there. Also, be sure you come back every week as we talk about some element of Think and Grow Rich, right here, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And next week, we've got another treat for you. We're going to be talking with Earl Cobb. He is a publisher, but not only a publisher, but he's got some real insight around this topic of mastering procrastination, and how you really start to create things once you make a decision. And he's going to talk about how he's leveraged that principle in his life and in his career. definitely not one you want to miss. This might be one where you might want to call some people. You might want to send them like some subtle hints that you struggle with making decisions, you struggle with procrastination, and rather than telling them straight out, just ask them to join this show and be a part of this, and you can kind of nudge them with your elbow throughout the conversation, because there are going to be some real gems. Well, that is it. That is it for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure you join us each and every Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern, where we jump in and go deep in Napoleon Hill's classic, Think and Grow Rich, by focusing on one particular principle for that conversation. Until next time, this is Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist, wishing you well and wishing that you will think and grow rich. Take care.